All right, let's head straight to the markets now. We have Willie Bonga with the details at this time, and we see the NGX again.
Hey, good afternoon, Ladi.
Marching down, good afternoon.
Yes, yesterday the NGX did play that one. Well, the analysts did talk about the correction in the market after 10 positive sessions. So correction is expected in the markets. There is nothing going on that is not supposed to be going on.
Can you say the same about Bitcoin at this point?
Well, yes. I think it got up to that high, 72,000, and now is dipping. And, you know, profit taking and sell-offs are normal in the market. So, Ladi, I'm sure that people who got greedy got greedy. That's all I have to say. So we begin with the major equities in Africa, where sentiments, unfortunately, were negative at intraday. Nigeria's NGX was down at intraday by 0.09%. We also see South Africa traded in negative territory, 0.45%. However, the stock exchange is slowly turning the tide, you know, from a wave of the listings to companies once again considering initial public offerings. Now, bankers have cited the potential interest rate cuts, upcoming election, and the country's plans to alleviate rolling blackouts among the factors for this revival. Now, elsewhere, let's look at Egypt's EGX 30. We see that continued dip. You know, sell-offs are still, you know, prominent in the market, 3.03% down. And this significant shift from liquidity, you're seeing that shift from equities to fixed income assets. That's what's going on at the Egypt EGX 30 now. And analysts say that the market correction is expected. And this is due to investors moving funds, as I said, to bank certificates and institutions allocating to fixed income assets amid rising interest rates. I think that's the main thing now. Now let's look at the East now. Kenya closed Monday's session in the red. At least it's still sustaining that 100 points level. Now let's delve into the unlisted equities market. We've been seeing some bloodbath there for some time now, and to give us a sense of what's going on there, we're joined by Mrs. Davina Adeni. She's the Chief Operating Officer, Executive Director, Bestward Asset and Trust Limited. Good afternoon, Mrs. Adeni. It's good to have you on the program.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. So, Mrs. Adeni, we've talked about the unlisted equities market. We had a conversation, and we're seeing it recorded its first positive close yesterday after, I say, some weeks of, you know, bloody outcomes. It was up 1.77%. But what has been the major drivers or reasons for the negative performance at the NASD?
Well, as you will have been hearing around now and in the past, we have a demand market that looks like operating on a pendulum. Okay, so each time there's an increase in the interest rates in the fixed market sector, like you have in the bonds, fixed, and then in the treasury bills, once there's an increase in the percentage that the investors tend to get, you find a situation where most of the very active investors move all their funds. They move all their funds out of the equity market, and what you have is a situation where you find so much money in the fixed income markets. Of course, when there's news that they are doing like 17%, doing like 16%, of course, naturally, most very out of the equity back into the fixed income market. And then when the fixed income rates go down, you find those funds coming back to the equity market. I think that's basically the reason why you find, you know, a downward turn in the activities and the prices.
Okay, so what's happening currently now at the NASD? Okay, so what's happening currently at the performance at the NASD as we speak? Intraday numbers, which stocks are investors eyeing, or which are they trading or fading?
Well, right now you find that most of the funds are currently actively trading on stocks like Aradel. Aradel, you have WAMCO, you have CSCS, and then upcoming you have Multiverse. Well, in the last few weeks, I could see that there was like a dip in the price of Aradel. Of course, because due to the factors that I mentioned earlier, because of the sudden upsurge in the interest rates in the fixed income market, you find out that even though the fundamentals for the Aradel were still there and still in place, going by the fact that it's a stock that has a power value of about 10 naira, and then, of course, looking at the fact that eventually they might be moving out into the major market, we'll have expected that more investors will have been, diving into Aradel. But because of the sudden announcement, the news that the fixed income market is yielding more, most investors are trying to eye and move out some of their investments in Aradel back into the fixed income market. And of course, that's why, of course, we see a situation where stocks like Afriland, and of course the 11 PLC, stocks like WAMCO, seem to attract some activity. But the major difference between the NASD and the NGX is that you can't really say for sure that some of the activities you are seeing is all of the activities you can really see. Because in the NASD market, it's a little bit more flexible and fluid. You could find like 2 million investors doing a negotiated deal at this hour, which you might not see immediately, transparently on the board. And close to towards the end of the market, by the time those negotiated deals, where you have a willing buyer, a willing seller striking a deal, then you see it clearly visible on the board towards the close of the market. That's the interesting thing about the NASD. And I think that's the more reason why investors who are looking at, publicizing their investments and at the same time privatizing it should come closer to the NASD. What I simply mean is that if I, have an investor who wants to list his company, he wants to be able to reap the yields from the public funds and at the same time keep it private. I think, with little share capital, he can come right into the NASD to do the listing. So it's a very, very, very strong, it has a very, very strong potential for attracting investors and raising funds for investors as well. Okay. That's what I think.
Very interesting. You mentioned Aradel Holdings there, and we know that the two stocks that moved the market that performed really well yesterday was Aradel Holdings and Akon Petroleum. So what would you say that's the petroleum, that's the oil and gas sector? Are there any other sectors that are supporting the growth in the NASD, or are we just going to see a downturn in other sectors that are also, listed on the NASD?
Yeah, there's an energy sector like the multiverse that seem to be coming up, and then we have some in the food sector. WAMCO is a stock that come day, come rain, come shine, you always see activities. It may not be so much, but you always see activities. This is because WAMCO is the kind of investment that attracts long-term yield, and so most of the long-term investors prefer it, so you still find activities there, okay? And then Aradel, of course, seem to be attracting much more investments at this time because of the fact that right now it's at lower than its performance should be. So I think that any investor coming into Aradel at this time is still going to be able to make a good margin for investors, who are impatient and think they can move out. If they come in at this time, I think it's still okay, because I see that stock like a stock that should get to like 3,000 naira per unit, on a good day at this time. So I think Aradel, is still good. And then those other food companies like WAMCO and then power companies like Multiverse, will be doing good at this time.
Fantastic. So how do you see the market closing today? Very quickly, red or green?
It's probably going to still be on the red, but I think Aradel will be on the green today, from what I can see.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Davina Adeni, Chief Operating Officer and Executive Director, Bestworth Assets and Trust Limited, for coming on Business Incorporated. So we'll move over to the Middle East now, where we see major stock markets in the Gulf putting mostly negative performance at intraday. And this is amid volatile oil prices and as investors await the outcome of the U.S. Federal Reserve's meeting. Now, most Gulf currencies are pegged to the dollar, and any monetary policy change in the U.S. is usually mimicked by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. And we see the Abu Dhabi index down 0.25% at intraday. Dubai also down 0.21%. Now, still within the region, we see Saudi and the Qatari indexes trading in opposite directions. We see Saudi up 0.19% and the Qatari index 0.11% down. Now, oil price is a major catalyst for the Gulf's financial markets, and it dipped today after reaching 4-month highs in the previous session. Now let's go over to the US now, where stock futures were little changed today after a bounce back in tech shares, and this was before NVIDIA's first ever GTC conference. Now futures tied to the Dow Jones was down 0.08%. S&P futures was also down 0.16%. NASDAQ futures also down 0.23%. Meanwhile, AI leader and chip maker NVIDIA, as I mentioned, pulled back roughly about 1% in extended trading. And this was because investors are evaluating the news from its inaugural AI conference. NVIDIA's chief executive unveiled the company's latest AI chip called Blackwell, which he touted as a significantly more powerful successor to its chips that power a multitude of AI operations. Now, tech stocks, also including Google parent Alphabet and Apple, also climbed on Monday. Now, Wall Street is awaiting the guidance on the path forward for monetary policy as the Federal Reserve begins its meeting today, and we'll hear what the outcome tomorrow, Wednesday. Now, let's look to Asia markets now. We see Japan's Nikkei 225 ending above 40,000, up 0.66%. Now, this is after the country's central bank raised interest rates for the first time since 2007. That's 17 years. And this is marking a historic shift in policy and ending the era of negative rates. The index was up 0.66%, as I mentioned. Now, South Korea was down, closed down 1.10%. The Shanghai index in Japan also down, the rest 0.72%. We see the Hang Seng index also down 1.11%. Now, let's look at Australia. It was up. That's the only green that's region apart from Japan, 0.36%. That's how they closed Tuesday's trading session. So, Ladi, we've seen that uptick for Japan and seen that shift from that negative era of, you have to pay to deposit in the bank. But right now, they're fighting deflation. But right now, I think inflation is creeping back into the economy. And they say, yeah, it's right.
The fight has changed in Japan.
The fight has changed now.
No more deflation.
No more deflation in Japan.
All right, thanks for the update, Will.